Black women in leadership. What's the fuss? For some, the conversation about women in leadership is just beginning, and for others, it feels as though it's never ending. But why should we discuss women in leadership, especially Black women in leadership, when it feels as though their presence already exists? What are the questions we need to ask as we diversify leadership within Canada? However, before we discuss this, it's important to note that this video was created on the Indigenous lands of Canada. The various Indigenous cultures of Canada have allowed the various cultures and traditions in our nation to thrive. And through this acknowledgement, we work to rectify the damaged treaties, as well as reflect on previous practices that have harmed the various groups within Canada. Today, I will explain why women's leadership is an essential point of discussion, particularly from the Black female intersectional lens. First, you may be asking, well, what is intersectionality? According to the dictionary, intersectionality is a complex, cumulative way in which the effects of multiple forms of discrimination, such as racism, sexism, and classism, combine, overlap, or intersect, especially in the experiences of marginalized individuals or groups. This concept was made famous by Kimberly Crenshaw when a case against General Motors determined that they are hiring Black males and Caucasian females in an effort to diversify, but overlooked Black females, as to them, they were already diversifying by getting two groups. This mindset that existed in the 70s, that you can only be one marginalized group, can still affect employers in our current society when they view the diversity in their leadership teams. This is because until 1990, leadership practices, such as the Great Man Theory, predominantly were described using male traits, such as aggressive, independent, or dominant. There is an expectation for a leader to be successful in leadership that they'd have to have a high IQ, natural-born charisma, and strict organizational skills that is still often seen in authoritarian leadership styles and practiced. As the human leadership experience has developed, though, so is the definition of leadership, the concepts and its expectations. Throughout this evolution, authors have characterized leaderships into concepts such as political, tribal, human resources, and symbolic, based on their operating principles, because they overlapped. The easiest way to think about this is old school versus new school. Political is one side of the spectrum that requires strict, rigid structure that is created or developed by one or few leaders. And symbolic, on the other side, sees success once the group is working together on goals that may not be tangibly defined. Authors such as Peter Senge and Elizabeth Thornton simplified New Age theories further by identifying the specific traits and practices required for successful leadership. These practices and principles included systems thinking, personal mastery, mental models, building shared vision, team learning, and the ability to challenge systems. However, to see success in these principles, leaderships must have the following traits. They must take responsibility to embrace the characteristics, things like self-awareness, authenticity, vulnerability, and a clear definition of not only their values, but the group's values. So now you may ask yourself, well, why does race matter? Are not all women the same? Well, first, let's look at the statistics. Since 1986, females have represented 50% of Canada's population, and that continues to increase. The Black population has doubled in size over the years and continues to grow, but is also very similar because within the Black population, it is 51.6% women. In 2016, 50% of women held doctorate degrees, and 40% of women had secondary education, whereas only 29.1% of men carried secondary education. The percentage of all immigrants with master's or doctorate degrees is twice that of the Canadian-born population. For example, in 2006, 43% of visible minority women were of the core working age, born in Canada, had a university degree, compared to 22% of their non-visible minority counterparts. So what do these statistics mean for you? Well, Michelle Obama, a famous leader out of the States, said it best. Success isn't about how much money you make, but the difference you make in people's lives. Women have the ability to make a difference in people's lives, regardless of microaggressions and aggressions. Microaggressions are comments or actions that subtly or unconsciously, or sometimes even unintentionally, express a prejudice towards a member of a marginalized group. And aggressions are a forceful action or procedure that are intended to dominate or master. Authors such as Weiner and Harris highlighted the women's struggle in leadership to find a way to become positive agents of change while dealing with stereotypes that are associated with the female gender. Things like being hormonal or a higher risk due to childbearing responsibilities or just misogyny theories. In action, this was seen in Alberta with Rachel Notley, NDP cabinet. She was berated in terms of negative connotations related to her sex when she made decisions that people did not agree with. Or recently, in the global health pandemic, Alberta's deputy health minister received more criticism for her appearance than policies, but received the blame when her male counterpart could not accurately enforce the policies that she created. However, Black women have dealt with these aggressions even further due to their race and their gender, and has seen in public comments that they're funny looking or uptight, or that if they appeal to a white audience, they're actually despised by their other Black female counterparts. They can be seen as independent, physical, or aggressive, and when they do that, they're called a dyke. A prime example of this is in media outlets, American political leaders such as Michelle Obama and Kamala Harris. They focused on their appearance, experiences, and tone of voice instead of their platforms and what they were accomplishing. So what does this all mean for organizations, leaders, and followers? It means we have to ask ourselves a lot of questions. If our goal for diversity is leadership, are we willing to operate and embrace practices that rely on EQ traits in order to create a thriving organization and vision achievement? Can we commit to looking at both the short-term and long-term goals and factor in the gains that come with diversity? If so, we must look further. We must ask ourselves as individuals, what are our values? Or think, what do we stand for? We must ask ourselves, what is my noble cause? Or what am I living for? What are my desired outcomes? Or what do I want personally and for the group? We must ask ourselves, what are our assets? Or what do I do and where am I that support the inclusion of females and Black females? And we must ask ourselves, what are my behaviors? Or what will I change to ensure that I have an inclusive leadership team and inclusive leadership lifestyle? It means challenging ourselves to question the qualitative traits such as technical skills and required efficiencies we ask of leaders, and asking our unconsciously created systems if they favor particular identities over others. I know, lots of questions, so think of this easy example. When looking for a service, we ask people we know but fail to question how broad our network is. If our network has the same hobbies, habits, education, and career, they'll most likely refer someone of the same. If our network looks exactly like us, we'll continue to refer those individuals and then be left wondering why we're not getting referrals from other demographics. It means challenging ourselves to look for non-qualitative traits associated with emotional intelligence. How can we embrace the EQ traits found within individual attitudes and behaviors that emphasize the public good? Various findings support such a prediction, specifically with members of legislative bodies, women, minorities, and especially women of color, are more likely than their white male colleagues to advocate for compassion policies that promote the interests of women, minorities, children, families, and the poor, and also support public welfare in areas such as healthcare, education, and social justice. For example, this can be seen in the American social leader Vanessa Williams, who continues to pave the way for others. She used the trauma and loss to rebuild her identity for good. She was the first African American to win Miss Universe, but due to both microaggressions and aggressions that would not have been allowed in our current society, she was stripped of her Miss Universe title in the same year. Although it was a huge setback, she dealt with the trauma and turned the pain and focused her skills that laid behind her beauty. Since then, she has had a flourishing career and been nominated for 11 Grammys and advocates for women's rights, gay rights, and other social justice issues. In Canadian history, women can be seen such as Kathleen Livingstone, Stella Meggie, and Violet King. They paved the way for others to become lawyers, directors, hockey players, and even cabinet members. So as you leave this video today, remember, women epitomize the qualities of affection, servanthood, empathy, high IQ, and nurturing more than men do. And this allows them easier navigation in current leadership practices. As people have observed more women competently serving as leaders, it no longer seems strange that a woman is in charge. However, to ensure the rise of female leaders positively impacts all groups, it is essential that Black women's contributions are recognized. In fact, given female leaders' associations with contemporary activism, they have come to symbolize modernity and future-oriented leadership styles. We need to challenge the systems when we do not see a balance of male and female, but we also need to challenge the systems when we don't see a balance of race. Canada has prided itself on being a mosaic where all can thrive in their personal identity. But are we adjusting to support that, or are we living in a one-size-fits-all? So before you go back to your day, ask yourself, who is the individual and authors that you receive your learning from? Are they male, female, Canadian, Black, Asian, Indigenous, Two-Spirit? Who are your available mentors? Who is currently at the tables that you host or wish to join? And as you leave, remember the words of Ivana Vanslet. The way to achieve your own success is to be willing to help someone else get it first.